The recording will start now. We'll start our session, second session, which is on classification and its applications. And our speaker, as I mentioned, Dr. Arun Chauhan. So let me introduce him first. So Dr. Arun Chauhan is an assistant professor in Department of Computer Science and Information System at Indian Institute of Information Technology, Dharwad. Before joining here, he was assistant professor in Department of Computer Science and Engineering at BITS Pilani, Rajasthan. He received his PhD degree from Computer Science and Engineering Department at Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee. He received his MTech degree from School of Information Technology at IIT Kharagpur. He has also been to IBM Watson Labs at IBM Bangalore for his research work on recommendation systems using microblocks for duration of 1 year. His broad area of interest covers data mining and machine learning. So with this short introduction, I would like to now hand over this session to our speaker, Dr. Arun Chauhan. And so please take over.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil, for nice, generous introduction. And I really thank you to give an opportunity for this talk.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's start. Let's start with this session. Okay, so this for this classification and its application. So my today's talk is based on classification. And formally, I will try to introduce you the different categories of classification. And from the main two categories, I will take one example from both. And finally, I will just give you one application, how you can implement classifiers, right? So I hope that most of you know basic understanding of this, because you have already gone through 2-3 sessions of machine learning. So I will assume basic understanding of things that what I'm going to introduce you here, right? So I request if anybody has please mute your videos so that connectivity will be proper. Right. So basically, this classification comes under the category of supervised learning, right? So I think if just before this session, you might have heard about clustering, which falls into this unsupervised learning. So this classification comes supervised learning, and for this, we have two categories like classification, and in supervised learning, we have two categories, classification and regression. Inherently, both problems are same, but the way we propose a problem, it just comes into two different categories. For example, in classification, we have a given label for a feature vectors, and once we come up with some classifier, then we want to predict that label. That label is a discrete label. It is having some class names over it. For example, it can maybe blue or red, or boy or girl, or day, night. So it can be of any label. And regression, we have some real number prediction over it, over a feature vector. For example, what if you have what is your age and what could be your salary. So salary can be of any real number from 0 to some 100,000 or 500,000. So it can fall into on any number. So this is not discrete, it is a continuous variable here. And as I said, that inherently these problems are same, but the way we just because of the characteristic of the attributes, they fall into the two different categories, classification and regression. Then if you just ask me what we can further, there is one more classification here or categorization, that is known as parametric and non-parametric models. So generally, the difference between parametric and non-parametric model is for parametric model, we know what is my parameters. I know my parametric form of a model. For example, you want to fit a Gaussian. to your data set, then beforehand you know like what is the parametric form of that model. So you are looking actually mean and variance. If it is a Gaussian, you are fitting a Gaussian. Or in Gaussian mixture models, like you know like there could be so many Gaussians, and what is the mixture of that probability of that mixture. Similarly, like if you are finding out linear regression, so in or logistic regression, you are looking for the hyperplane, which again classify by the normal vector and intercept, right? And they will be fixed with the size of a data. For example, if you have 100 points, then also for Gaussian, you will have mean and variance. And if you have infinite data points, then also you will be like having this, the number of parameters will be fixed, mean and variance. In parametric, that is for parametric model. And for non-parametric models, your parameter will grow with the size of a data, right? So it can, if your data is infinite, then your parameter will be infinite, right? That is the main difference between parameter and non-parametric model. So I will pick like one algorithm from each of the category and then discuss them, like how they are different and how that parameter grows and all, right? Please stop me if you have any question in between, right? So I will first introduce the non-parametric model, and in that I'm taking one example for k-nearest neighbor, which is very intuitive to understand and easy to discuss, right? Once you have an intuitive feeling in your head, like what is k-nearest neighbor, then we will. It is easy to describe the theory behind it. So in this k-nearest neighbor, the main intention is to predict the label if I'm doing classification. So I'm not in general talking about classification and less about regression. So in classification, for example, in this on this slide, you want to predict the label of this green dot, right? So this is, you want to predict the label of this green dot, right? So then you will see like what are the nearest points near to this, and you will see for example, if you take k equals to 1, so you are actually looking one sample which is in the neighborhood of this green sample. So if you take k equals to 1, then you will find one nearest neighbor which is of this label. It is a square, and and it belongs to class 1, right? So if you go by this k equals to 1, then the nearest neighbor is this class 1 blue square. And if you want to predict what could be the label of this green point, which is unknown right now, then you, because of this algorithm, you just say that okay, the nearest neighbor is of class 1. So definitely I feel that this green point is also belongs to class 1, right? If now if you say that okay, I don't want to take k equals to 1, I want to go for k equals to 3, then it means you are saying that please find out what are the nearest 3 points in the neighborhood of this unknown point. So this is my first point, this blue square. This is my second point, this red triangle. This is my third point, right? So among these 3 points, you will see what are the majority. What is a major class here? So there are two triangles and one square. So because the majority is for triangle, you say that this green point belongs to the class 2, which is a triangle class, right? So this is very easy to understand, intuitive to feel. So, but the major problem with this is like you need to compute the distance, right? What is the distance? How you will going to compute a distance from a unknown point, right? So, and it will be worst when you are in a multi-dimension space. For an example, it is easy to calculate the distance between like 1 dimension or 2 dimension as you have a limited data set. But when you go for higher dimension space, let's say in 100 dimension or 200 dimension, and even for text like 1 million dimension, then that curse of dimensionality will come into a picture. What it says, like if in 1 dimension you are happy with 100 points, right? Then your requirement of data will grow exponentially along with the dimension, right? So if in 2 dimension you may be needing 10,000 points, and in 3 dimension you will be needing 100 to the power cube, and this will go in exponentially in terms of a data dimension, right? So, and the limitation of machine learning is that we don't have much data at our hand. We don't have infinite data at our hand. If we have infinite data, then there is no need of doing machine learning, right? Because every time you want to find out or predict the label of a data set, you will be having in your training data set. So you want to generalize it, and when you want to generalize it, the limitation is that you have very less data at your hand, right? It is a subjective question. You may say that now because in this digital world I have infinite data at internet, but not for every application it is available, right? So that what in general I mean that I have a limited data set, but when I go for higher dimension, that limited data set will act as a very sparse data set in the multi-dimension. Sparse means, like for an example, in one dimension these 2 points are very near, right? But in 3 dimension, let's say in 3 dimension I will have one more axis, and on this third axis this one point will have 100 values, so it will just shift to this, so towards on this axis towards 100, right? And this point will be at its original place. So because of adding third dimension, and third dimension varies a lot, so this distance between these 2 points now is very much because of this third dimensionality. And as you keep on adding the dimensions, because of the different values in the dimensions, the distance will be like more and more, and then defining the nearest neighbor will be a problem. Because you say nearest neighbor, you expect it should be near into the proximity or neighborhood, but as you have very less data set, so the nearest neighbor or nearest point to this to the unknown point may be like far away from the here, and then taking a label from that point to this unknown point may not make sense, because the idea was that you are following some distribution, and in distribution the density follows some labels, and then you take that label. But because of this curse of dimensionality, that the idea will be like jeopardized because of this metric concept, right? So though it is easy to understand, but it just give drastically different results when you just proceed go into higher dimension space, right? Okay, so now if you see, like if you want to go, I just take a very simple example from elements of statistical learning chapter 2, and I want to show you like how this things matters, how this k value of k will matter. So here in this example we have some data set, and this data set is classified into two classes, orange and blue, right? So there are two classes, orange and blue. We have labeled orange as 1 and blue as zeros, right? So we just to for the just for implementation purpose, we have labeled them with some numerical values, but it is not mandatory to label them with numerical value. It can be a or b. But when we do this 1 and 0, so mathematically computations are easy and handled to do. We can able to handle the data easily computation wise. So let's say I have in a data set I have two classes. I label first class as 1 and the second class as 0. Now I want to do k nearest neighbor. So in a given data set, these data set is given to me, orange dots and blue dots, right? Now if you just come here, if you want to classify this point here in the red, you say that I want to take 15 nearest neighbors. So what are the 15 points? Let's say these are the 15 points in the nearest neighbor. Out of these 15 points, you sum them up, because oranges will sum to 1. So the number of orange points are, let's say, 7, and blue are, let's say, 8. So the sum will be 7, because all blues are zeros and these oranges are 1 1 1. So there are 7 points. The sum will be 7, right? So if you just divide it by like if you just find out the ratio, you will get 0.5. It will be less than 0.5, and then you say that this point belongs to a blue class, right? And if it is greater than 0.5, then you say that it belongs to an orange class. So likewise, you take a grid, and for every point on a grid, you take 15 nearest neighbor and find it out whether it is greater than 0.5 or less than 0.5, and then you just say that it is a blue or orange. If you go by that way, then this black decision boundary will be formed, and you see that this black decision boundary is bit irregular, Though you may argue with me, like I can't see it as a smooth decision boundary, and it is having so many jerks in it. But if you just say abstract, if you see it in abstraction, so it is somewhat smoother than in comparison to this figure on the right, right? So when you take one nearest neighbor, you found out that the decision boundary is very isolated and it is very irregular, and it gives somewhere zero training error, because every time so the training error will be less here. It is almost zero because it is a overfitted the data, and in this training data set the training error will be a bit high, and it is less overfitted, and more approximately it can be more generalized. What do you mean by generalization? Generalization means like when I have a decision boundary, if you give me a new point, let's say this point falls here, so the probability that this point will draw a right class or a true class will be higher if my generalization is better, right? So some of you may think like, what would be the number of parameters here? So the number of parameters, some deceptively you may say that the number of parameter is k. That is, I have only one parameter. If you say that k equals to 15, then I will get this decision boundary on left. And if you say that k equals to 1, then you get a right decision boundary. But k is not actually a parameter. The effective number of parameter will be n by k, right? The effective number of parameter in this example will be n by k. And if you grow if n goes to infinity, and for some fixed constant value of k, your parameter will goes to infinity, right? So that's why it falls into the non-parametric models, right? Okay. Any question till here? Okay. So now one important theory of machine learning says that if you are less minimizing an expected error, right, for a given function. So I hope you have covered linear regression, right? So Dr. Sunil,
No, sir. No, sir. It has not been covered. It was scheduled, but Dr. Ramesh was not available because of his health yesterday. So that session will happen today afternoon.
okay, fine. Okay, I will just slightly touch the linear regression then.
Okay,
So
sir.
so this is like I have one for linear regression. What is the objective? So for an example, I have these 2 points here, and somebody asked me to fit a line to these 2 points. So because I can always fit a line to 2 points, so I can have this best line which can goes to these 2 data points, right? But if I have 3 data points, let's say, but if I have 3 data points, then the problem will be different, right? Then I cannot pass this line from every data point in my data set. So let's say these are the few data point, and I want to pass a line. In that case, my best line will be like that, and it will be giving some error here, right? So this will be the error. So this will be the error. So in linear regression, the idea is to minimize this error as much as you can, right? So this is also one line which gives error for every point, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it will give error for every point, but this second line is better than this first line. So this is first line, this is second line. So this second line is better than first line because it is more close to a data set, and it will give me a less error. And to calculate what is the error, so that they not cancel each other, we are squaring these errors and then sum them up. So that's why we are squaring the error and then sum them up. So if we sum them up and divide by the number of points, it is an average. So theoretically, average is nothing but expectation. So I am saying that I want to minimize the expected value of my error, right? This is what it is written on this slide. So we are trying to minimize the expected value of my error, right? And if you expand it, because I have two variables here, random variables x and y, so in terms of joint probability distribution, you are just saying that I am integrating over every probability and want to minimize it. So though I can do it for the sake of this completeness, but I think it is not needed here. The intuition is, now you are looking for a line actually, and in general a function which can minimize your error as much as you can. So theoretically you can show that by doing some by just twisting or doing some algebra and mathematics. You can show that the function which can minimize your expected error will be the conditional expectation. What is conditional expectation here? Conditional expectation says that for a given value of x, let's say I have three different values of y, or four different values of y, and you want to predict what is the best value for this x. Then you sum these values of y and take an average. So let's say average falls somewhere here. So if somebody asks you, what do you think, though I have four values of y for a given x, what do you think, what is the best value of y? You say, what you do, you just sum them these y values and take an average and say, I feel the average will be the best. And theoretically you can show that conditional average will always reduce your error to the minimum, right? So that can be so the solution is a conditional expectation, and conditional expectation is that function which can always minimize your error at maximum, right? So not to fall for the mathematics, but the takeaway points are here is that if you are doing some linear regression, then the best function that you can find to minimize your error is a conditional expectation, right? What is that conditional expectation? How you calculate it? It depends upon what your function is actually and what your data set it is. But in short, it is a conditional expectation. Okay. Why I'm telling you here is this is a conditional expectation. When I'm teaching you k-nearest neighbor is this theory, which is actually eligible for most of the problem in data set. I just take that same theory and I know that my best function is a conditional expectation. If I want to see my k-nearest neighbor with this theory, I can actually easily fit this intuition to my KNN also. How come? When I say it is a conditional expectation, there are two approximations I am making in k-nearest neighbor. First approximation is that expectation is theoretical concept, and I am replacing it with a sample average, right? So for an example, for a given value of x, it may not be possible that you have so many values of y. So what you do, you may have three different values of y or two different values of y. So you're taking an average of those values. So this sample average is actually a approximation of an expectation, where expectation theoretically says that you sum all the infinite points available at x and then take an average. But you are taking a sample mean rather than taking a theoretical mean, right? The second is that second approximation, you may say that I may not get any point on x, right? So you say that, okay, I relax this condition and I say that rather than seeing all values on exactly on x, you see values nearby x, right? So you are taking a neighborhood of x and finding out the values here and then take an average. So for k-nearest neighbor, you have taken the same theory and you have just approximated, you have taken a two approximation. First, you are taking a sample mean, and then you are loosening the constraint of taking y values exactly on x. You are taking y values around the x in the neighborhood. So if you take these two approximation, then you will easily fit your intuition of finding out the solution for minimizing the expected prediction error, EPE. So I have taken the notations directly from Elements of Statistical Learning, Chapter 2. In case you are interested to know more about it, you please refer that book. Any questions so far on it?
So which book?
It is Elements of Statistical Learning. You just Google and you will get it. Right?
Okay,
Chapter 2. So the intuition here that I want to put it on slide is that we have derived that the best function to minimize my error is a conditional expectation, And I am trying to show you here is that this same conditional expectation actually valid for k nearest neighbor also, if you see, if you relax or approximate these two things here. One is taking a sample mean, and other, rather than taking all y values on a given x, you take all y values around the x, right? Okay. Okay, so this is all about like non-parametric estimation here, and here as I said that the effective parameters will be n by k, and it will keep on growing when you have a more data set to go. The classifier, actually this is a classifier. I hope you are getting this point, right? This is a classifier here. So because where you are predicting it, you may say that I can always predict whether the balls are, the given point is red or orange. You can even do regression also for that. For an example, rather than taking the majority of a class, you can take an average of a label of a class, then it falls, rather than saying that it is a classification, then it will be a regression, but in terms of a nearest neighbor, right? So you are taking average of those continuous scale. With this, I just I introduce you to the parametric estimation of the things, right? Non-parametric estimation model. Then I will introduce. Now I'm going to come to a very simple model, just because I came into the very first or second day of the FDP, so I feel that not to dive into a very complex model. So I, for the sake of simplicity and clarity, I have taken logistic regression. So I will walk through all you guys step by step to this model and try to give you an intuition. Please hold me or stop me and ask me if you have any query. So the intention is to make you understand, not to deliver only, right? To deliver the lecture. So please stop me. So before diving into this logistic regression, I want to introduce you some linear algebra concept that is known as hyperplane. So what hyperplane? If somebody tell you that this is a hyperplane. Hyperplane, intuitively, if you can understand, if you are in 2 dimension, hyperplane is a line, right? If you are in 3 dimension, hyperplane is a plane only, right? It is a plane. And in general, if you are in n dimension, the hyperplane will be n-1 dimension. So I will take an example of a line so that it helps you to understand, because just in one line, if I say that this is a hyperplane, it doesn't make you much sense, because because you have been doing geometry since your 8th class, so you are very much familiar about the characteristic of a line. So right now I am taking a very simple example where my hyperplane is in 2 dimension, which actually is a line, right? So I am in 2 dimension space and I am trying to find out my hyperplane. So let's see how to define a hyperplane first. So hyperplane, which is a line. So there are 2 equations you have seen. One, you have seen y equals to mx plus c, right? You might have seen so many times in your geometry. So the other way you can write is, what you can write is, there are 2 parameters here. One is m, which is slope, and c is intercept. You say this c is w0, right? And intercept is w1. Slope is w1. And you say that this x is as it is, and you introduce x0 here, which is always 1, right? So in linear algebra terms, this is nothing but a dot product between 2 vectors, which is nothing but with w0 and w1, and the second vector is x0 and x1. So not to confuse with, I have introduced one variable x0, which is always 1. So it is not affecting anything to my, like, I have not introduced any new thing here. My x0 is 1. Just for notation purpose, I have said that I can write it into a dot form, or I can write it as w transpose x, right? It is w transpose x. So w is a vector with 2 dimension, w0 and w1. X is also a vector with 2 dimension, x0 and x. Let's say it is x1, right? It is x1. So then this is a dot product. And if this line is going through origin, you say that in homogeneous, it is like you say that W transpose X will be, if it is going through zero, through origin, then W transpose X will be 0. And if it is not going through origin, so it is some vertical distance away from origin, right? So let's say it is a vertical distance away from origin, and this distance is D, right? So this is a perpendicular distance of a line from origin. Then you say W transpose X will be your D, right? This is how you can just see your line of equation into linear algebra terms differently, right? So I will just introduce you. So I have told you intuitively how you can see a line as a hyperplane in standard form. So this W transpose X is the same thing. And what I have said D there, it is like the distance, horizontal perpendicular distance from origin, right? So you just map all those notations there. So if you want to find it out whether your given point is actually on a hyperplane, right, then you will get a 0. For an example, the line of equation is x1 plus x2 equals to 3, right? X1 plus x2 equals to 3. It means this line, there is a line which is going like this. So it is always 3, right? So it is 0, 3 and 3, 0. 3, 0. And it is 0, 3. So this line is going through these 2 points. And if you want to show this in like a hyperplane, this is the equation. So if you take any point on this line, let's say I take 0, 3 only. So it will satisfy this equation. So 0 plus 3 equals to 3, right? So it will satisfy this equation. And in more,
sir, in the equation, the coordinates should be swapped. I mean, it will be 0, 3 should be written as 3, 0.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very much. It's a nice correction. So yeah, it is actually 3, 0 and 0, 3. So, but my theory still holds, right? So it is 0, 3 and 3, 0. Right? So then what you say that if you take any point on a line and you put this point in this equation, this will get still, it is satisfying it. In more generic terms, what you can do, you just bring this 3 here, right? And you say that x1 plus x2 minus 3 will be 0. So every time you feed a point which is actually on a line, it will result into a 0. It will result into a 0 because you have bring x1 plus x2 minus 3, right? You have brought 3 into the left hand side. So now if you just feed any point which is falling onto a line, it will give you a 0. You can check and you can see it, right? So this is a basic characteristic. First thing is, if a point falls on a hyperplane, you will get 0, right? If a point doesn't fall on a hyperplane, then you need to calculate a perpendicular distance of a point from that hyperplane, right? If that is the case, for an example, this is a point x, and you are interested in perpendicular distance of a point from a line, right, from a hyperplane. So this perpendicular distance will be calculated like this, right? So where yx is nothing but the equation of a hyperplane. So you are dividing your, you take your hyperplane, that is W transpose X. X is nothing but the point which you want to calculate. If X is on the line, then it will result you a 0. But if X is not on the line, either it is below the line or above the line, right? Then it will give you some number. That number is a distance from that hyperplane. And this distance is relative. But if you divide this hyperplane with the norm of a W, then this distance will be absolute distance, right? So in short, because I may not have that much time to explain you all this geometry, and so in short, what you can take from the slide is, if you want to calculate a perpendicular distance from this perpendicular distance from a hyperplane, then you just take the equation, normalize it, and put the value of x. You will get the perpendicular distance of a hyperplane, right? So if the point is on hyperplane, you will get 0. If the point is above the hyperplane, you get some positive number, and that positive number is decided by this. And if the point is below the hyperplane, you get some negative number, and still the equation is same, right? You will find out the perpendicular distance. So now you have 3 things at your hand. You can calculate the perpendicular distance of a hyperplane, right? With that point which is in your data set, right? The only thing that matters here is what is the line which can divide your data set accurately. For an example, there are 2 circles and there is 2 crosses. You are interested in finding out a line. So when you are interested in finding out a line, so there can be infinite lines which can satisfy this data, right? There can be infinite lines which can satisfy this data. And you are interested in one of the most probable line. Probable means which is very which make more sense in comparison to other lines. For example, one line could be line where one line can be like going through very near to the data set, and one line going through the middle of these 2 points. So this middle line is making more sense because it is dividing more accurately. So if you ask me out of these 2 lines which is more probable, I will choose this line which is going at the middle of the one, right? So now the things for any classification, not to forget, I am discussing parametric modeling. In parametric modeling, I am trying to find out a hyperplane here. And when I say it's a parametric modeling and I'm finding out a hyperplane, it means I am finding out a vector W. And there are 2 parameters actually. What is the perpendicular distance from the origin, and what is the orientation of a hyperplane, W transpose, right? So the only intention is to find out the parameter W. Once you find out a parameter W, you will get where is exactly the line. So you want to maximize the probability as per your data set that and that maximization will give you the value of W's. Okay. Okay, so now I said that there are 3 points, right? So one, there is, let's say, cross is above the line and circle is below the line. You know how to calculate the perpendicular distance, right? So you calculate the distance for this point. This is P1 or D1. Let's say for distance it is D1, and for second point the distance is D2, right? Is there any way to convert this distance into probability? Yes, there is a way to convert this perpendicular distance into probability, and this is by this sigmoid function, right? So if you feed the distance here in the sigmoid function, then this formula will give you some number between 0 to 1. And if the point is actually on the line, the distance will be what? Can anybody tell me if the point is actually on the line, what will be the perpendicular distance? Quickly, anybody?
0.
0, very nice. So if you feed 0 in this formula, you will get 0.5, 0.5. So if you feed the point which is actually on the hyperplane, you will get 0.5. It means, and if the point is above the line, you will get some positive distance and the number will be greater than 0.5. If the point is below the hyperplane, then you will get some negative number and the number will be less than 0.5. So you can see here on this axis, right? So if you get some positive number greater than 0, so if the number is greater than 0, all your y points will be more than 0.5. And if the number is less than 0, then all your the formula will give you some number between 0 to 0.5, right? So then it is easy to calculate the perpendicular distance, and when you calculate the perpendicular distance, you can convert that number into some probability number. I'm not saying it is exactly probability, but it simulates like a probability because it squashes a perpendicular distance between 0 to 1. And the magic is done by this formula. And the name of the formula is sigmoid function, right? So it squashes every number, right? It squashes any number between 0 to squashes any number between -infinity to +infinity between 0 to 1, right? So that's how we can just we can expect simulate, or we can just have an intuitive feeling that okay, we feel that this is a way to convert some real number into a probability. Fine. So if this is done, then there's few things left now. Any questions before we go further? So till now I have told you that there is a hyperplane. I don't know what is that hyperplane, but if you give me a hyperplane, I can calculate the distance. That perpendicular distance, once I get the perpendicular distance, I can convert that distance into a probability. These three things I have told you, but I have not told you how to find out that hyperplane. Once you give me a hyperplane, I can find out the perpendicular distance, and from that perpendicular distance, I can convert it into a probability, right? Remember this thing. Okay. So this is just keep your things in your head. Now you may say that you are always talking about hyperplane and line in 2 dimension. If it is not possible to separate our data set from a line, then what you do? Okay. Yes, that may be a situation. For an example, in this figure first, right? In this figure 1, you see that there are 2 classes, red and blue, but no line in this world can separate these 2 classes, right? Because they are not linearly separable. So in machine learning, there is a trick to handle this kind of thing. What they say, you just transform these data set such that they will be linearly separable. Again, you may say like how to find out that transformation is a big subjective question. But right now, intuitively, you feel that there are some basis functions which take your data set and transform such that, for example, here I have taken Gaussian basis function, right? Normal basis function. So using this normal basis function, all my red points will transformed to here in this space, and this first point cloud will be transformed into this space, and this third cloud will be transformed into this space. Now you can find out a line which can separate it, right? This is that line. So at first, originally, my data set was not linearly separable. Now, after doing some transformation, I can get a linearly separable data, and then I run the logistic regression here, right? So if I run my logistic regression here, it may not give me any wise or reasonable answer. But if I transform it and convert it into this form, and I run logistic regression here, then it will give always me a true answer, right? Real answer, because here the data set is linearly separable. You may ask, how do I get to know what is my basis function, right? So there are huge research based on kernel functions. So I'm just introducing one more term, kernel function. So that kernel function will tell you like what you should do with your original data set in pre-processing, so that you can put it into a high dimensional space where you can make it linearly separable, right? For an example, here on this slide, I am just projecting my 2-dimension data onto 2-dimension only, right? But it may be possible that you can project your data from 2-dimension to 3-dimension. For an example, here, this is a curve into a plane, and somebody asks you to just pass a road like this from this plane. So if you try it, you find it impossible to do it. Likewise, but if you do this way, then if you project your road from 2-dimension to 3-dimension, right? So originally my road was also 2-dimension, and this curve is also in 2-dimension. If I put my road and curve in the same plane, there is no way that I can pass this road from this curve. But if I take my road from that space from 2-dimension to 3-dimension, and then I will try, then you can see it will get through it. This is like one superficial example I found on web, and I thought just to put it this way. So here, just to make it clear, I had one curve in 2 dimension. I had one road in 2 dimension. I wanted to pass my road through this, but I couldn't do it. When I take my road from 2 dimension to 3 dimension and try to do it, it happened, right? Similarly, this case. So there are few red points and blue points. I want to find out a plane. This time I'm not finding out a line. I am trying to find out a plane which can separate these blue and red dots separately. But you can see there is no plane such that I can do it. So the trick is I can take my data set and project into 3 dimensional space and then find out a hyperplane. Please see it. Right? So here you have seen that I wanted to find out a linear hyperplane. Sorry, linear is redundant here. I wanted to find out a hyperplane. But if I just wanted to do it here in this 2 dimension, there is no hyperplane which can separate these data classes. So what I did, I just took this 2 dimension points and projected into 3 dimension and then find out a hyperplane there. And once I projected that plane back into my original space, I found out that hyperplane is nothing but it's a circle. Right? So geometrically, I have given you intuition, and it is what.
Sir, would you kindly replay this video?
Yeah, sure. So this is a hyperplane actually, which is a plane in 3 dimension. This purple one. Right. So the intuition here is some of you may argue like you are just saying that linear logistic regression is fine, but we are trying to find out a hyperplane. But if the data is not linearly separable in that dimension, so the trick is you just project the data into higher dimension, and there you find out a hyperplane. And once you project that back to the original space, that same hyperplane will give you a non-linear decision boundary. Okay, so I want to connect the dots here. So far, I have told you how to find out a perpendicular distance from a hyperplane, how to convert the distance into a probability. Then the second part is if the data is not linearly separable, you use basis function and make it linearly separable, find out a hyperplane, find out a distance, and then convert into a probability. So the things is simple here, right? So now from here onwards, I always assume that my data is linearly separable. I am finding out a hyperplane. And in general, that hyperplane will give me a perpendicular distance for every sample. And for every sample, I convert that distance into a probability, right? So the most important concept about this here is maximum likelihood estimation. So maximum likelihood estimation says that once you get the probability for every sample. So just for illustration, I will show you that there are 3 points, P1, right? This is P1, P2, right? And P3. This is P3. Then if you calculate a distance, perpendicular distance, it is D1. This is D2. And this is D3. Right? You convert this perpendicular distance into probability. So let's say it is PR1. This is PR2. and this distance PR3, right? PR3. You take an independent assumption and multiply these three probabilities. So it is a probability of a data set for this hyperplane, and it is known as likelihood estimation. So you want to maximize this probability, right? So can anybody tell me, if I want to maximize the probability, what is the thing that I'm tweaking here, right? So I want to maximize the probability, what I'm changing, what I'm tweaking, just to maximize, just to change the probability or just to change the product. So I have three numbers, PR1, PR2, PR3. So I just want to I just want to tweak this product. So what should I change in this
Probability.
sorry?
What is probability here, sir? What is the need of probability to find out the probability?
I cannot hear you, Madam Clear. Can you just
Sir, what is probability? Why we need to find out the probability?
probability? What is probability? Probability is just a number here, right? Between 0 to 1, which I have just converted from using sigmoid function.
Sir, but what is the purpose to find out the probability?
That's what I'm telling you, right? So the question, if you listen carefully, then it makes sense. So I'm asking you that if I multiply all these three probabilities, and I want to tweak this product, what should I change in my problem construct?
Transform into take logarithm and then take summation and then take NP-log.
That's fine. That's fine, but it is a next step. So till here, I'm saying that I have three numbers and I'm getting these numbers somehow, right? So I want to change the product of these three numbers. What should I change? I cannot change the data set, right? Data set is given to me. It is constant. So what is the thing that I can change?
Translate this probability. Translate the original probability distances. Probabilities. Translate it. I mean,
I should translate the line. I should translate the line, right?
the line. Yeah.
Line will change, the distance will change, and for the distance, the probability will change, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You got it, Vidya? Like
Yes,
if I change the line, that line will change the perpendicular distance, and that perpendicular distance will change my probability, which I have converted it using some sigmoid function, right?
okay.
So the product will get changed once I change my line or hyperplane. Now the things come, I should put my line somehow where my max product will be maximized, right? So now the calculus comes into play. This is a product of a probability. I want to take a maximum of it. Rather than doing directly maximum, I take the log of this function and take a negative. It means I want to minimize it rather than maximize it. And once I do it, I will get a solution, right? So I get a solution like here. So this is my negative log likelihood. I want to find out what is the derivative of it. And this is a derivative which is dependent basically on the data samples, right? And so the other concept which is important in logistic regression is, how do you know the functions which you want to minimize, the error function is convex, right? So what do you mean by convex? So there is a function, when you minimize it, it is always having a unique minimum. If this is a function, then it is having two minimum, and you will not be you are not very sure which minimum you can reach. Start based on your starting point. If you start from here, you will reach here, and if your starting point, you will reach here, right? So, but for this logistic regression, the problem is simple. My error function is convex. On this slide, I'm proving that my error function is convex. How to do that? So this was my error function. I take a double gradient, right? Double derivative of it. I found out that this is a matrix which is there. In this matrix, I have a diagonal matrix R, and it is like y1 minus, it is a product of y1 minus y. Y is nothing but a probability which I converted using sigmoid function. So the product of two probability will be always positive. So R is nothing but a positive diagonal matrix. right? So for PSD, positive semi-definite matrix, the rule is that if you take any vector V and multiply on left and right of the matrix, V transpose V on left and right, for a given matrix, which is phi transpose R phi, then you will always get a positive number. If it is always you get a positive number which is greater than 0, then you can say that my R matrix, actually phi transpose R phi, is a positive semi-definite matrix. And if it is a positive semi-definite matrix, then definitely your error function is a convex function. So to prove that your error function is convex, you just need to take a double gradient derivative of that error function and show that the thing that what you got is PSD or PD. Here it is PD, positive definite. It is not positive semi-definite. So my corrections here, it is positive definite. It is always greater than 0, right? Not greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so intuitively, if that mathematics doesn't make sense to you, so it means that your cost function looks like this. And if you want to minimize it, you can take a steps here like this into the direction of a slope. And once you get to the lowest point, you just stay there, right? It is a gradient descent method. So for an example here, it is also you are learning a parameter, intercept and slope, let's say W0, W1, and you start somewhere because the function is convex. This function is convex, it has a unique minimum. This minimum is shown as a red star. And wherever from you start, you always fall to this red star, right? It doesn't matter from where you started. Because the function is convex, and I have shown you here on logistic regression, the function was convex, so you always get a unique solution. Fine. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? So just to connect the dots, I had first formulate the notation of hyperparameter, hyperplane. Then I find out the perpendicular distance of a point. Then I converted the perpendicular distance into probability. I multiplied all those probabilities and said that this is a likelihood function. I wanted to maximize it. I take a double gradient and showed that the matrix is positive definite. It means it is a function is convex. It means I will get a unique minimum, but the function is not analytical solution. So I have to run the gradient descent on it. And once I run a gradient descent, I will converge to a point which is a unique global minimum, and that is the solution, which will give me the direction of a parameter hyperplane and a distance of a hyperplane from the origin. You remember? I told you how the line, what is orientation of a line and how far it is from the origin. These are the two parameters. Okay. There is a problem of overfitting, but I want to skip it because I feel that it may not make sense to you if I go over it. Okay. So I think I'm running quickly on slides because of less interaction. If you want to stay up or want to discuss something over here, please let me know. Anything? Fine. So let's take a very small example, which you may find on my GitHub repository. I have given a code also there. So you just run it anytime on your browser. So the point is, I have taken a MNIST data set, and here the dimension of this is, I think, 28 by 28 pixel. So if this is 2-dimension image, 28 by 28 of single channel, it means it is a black and white. When you flatten this image like this, and this is a logistic regression I have shown you. So this is the value of X, and these are the values of W. So if you write it, it is W transpose X, right? It is a W transpose X. And you want to find out the value of W, which is nothing but the hyperplane orientation. And how you do it, you just take first the image, you flatten that image. Like for an example, if the image is of 2 dimension, 1, 2, 3, 4, you flatten this into a vector, and this vector will be a 4 by 1. So here, similarly, the image is of 28 by 28. You flatten this image, you will get 784 into 1. Then finally, you take all images, right? So let's say you have M images. So you flatten first image, flatten second image, third image, and likewise mth image, and corresponding labels also. So first image is having a label 4, right? Second image may belongs to 0, right? Second image belongs to 0. So why are labels here? You take forward pass. So I have implemented into a neural network terminology. You take a forward pass, you calculate the gradient. In a backward pass, you just run the gradient descent. I hope you know gradient descent, right? W minus learning rate into gradient. DW. You run a gradient descent, you will get a new value of your parameter. You just put these values again and find out the cost, and then again take a gradient, and you just looping over these 3 steps again and again till you reach the minimum, right? Oops. Any questions, please? I'm happy to take your questions so that we can utilize our time. Anybody?
Sir, there are some questions in the chat box.
Oh, checkbox.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay. First is, sir, I think pictorial representation can be implemented in MATLAB or other. Yeah, you can do it in Python. I did it sometimes in my MATLAB, but I'm very sure that you can do it and everything on Python, which I have put in my slides. So these are all like hand-produced codes. So second is, sir, what should be the size of image before and after applying feature extraction and reduction techniques? So I have not told you like how to extract the features. Here I'm directly using image and putting that vector as a feature. But that has happened like long back when you did not have deep learning. So you wanted to extract some features using some algorithms. But right now I don't think so that you need to extract the features. So here in this example, I have taken image and directly flattened that image as a vector, and I'm taking that vector as a features. So as such, I have not told you like how to extract the feature. It depends upon application to application. But if you are in an image, I don't recommend you to go for that feature extraction part here. You just directly apply neural network, right? That is far better thing to do nowadays if you have GPUs. Okay. Second is Devisha Aruna Devi. Is this implementation Python? Will you please share the PPT? It was very informative. Yeah, sure. This PPT will be shared by Dr. Sunil Somya. I will do the thing. So you can just find out my GitHub link using my core. This Arun Thakur, ARUNTAKHUR. You just see it, you will find my GitHub. Anything else?
Anything? Any other question from the participant? I guess there is no question. I guess one question is, sir, I'm planning to detect what is that? Size on leaves. So which algorithm will be best? So that is the question which we asked by Vidya Rao.
So maybe typo. Can you write it again? Like decisive on leaves. This is it like I'm getting it correct? I'm planning to detect it.
And sir, which algorithm will be best to detect the diseases on leaves?
Diseases. Oh, diseases. Okay. So leaves. Yeah. So algorithm which is best. So that you need to go for this neural networks. I feel nowadays for vision problems you don't need to think twice. So the only left is what is the architecture of this neural network, right? So you just try 3-4 different type of neural networks, and I think that would do best other than doing linear algebra or something. I think you should try neural networks.
I guess they will have some session from tomorrow about the neural networks and some special architecture on neural network. Then they will understand the thing better, I guess.
Right.
Sir, how to handle outliers? Shankar is asking.
Okay. So this is something like I think it is a density estimation problem, and which is not relevant here, but still I want to just give you a direction. So for this outlier detection, if you can see the slide here, so what we do, we just find out a parametric form of a distribution. So let's say the parametric form of a distribution is Gaussian. Let's say I have to think in my head at first, what is the parametric form of our given. So I have these five numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is, let's say, fifth number. So this is a fifth number somewhere here, right? So in that case, I want to find out my parametric form of a distribution. So I freezed it on a Gaussian distribution. Then when I freeze the Gaussian distribution, somewhere mean will be here, right? And the density will go like this. So the density will go like this. Then I will find it out which is the data set, which are the data points which is having less probability or approximately to 0. And in that case, when I found out when I sort it as per the probability density, I found out that this is the point which is having probability approximately to 0. Then I will say that this may be the tentative plausible outlier, right? This is what. So you need to estimate the density, Shankar. So once you estimate the density, then you can easily find it out, like what is there. Okay. It is actually a question of probabilistic machine learning, and it needs some advanced concepts. Anyway, but the directions are same.
Thank you so much, sir. Like there are, it was really nice session. The participants are really, I mean, they got a nice idea. I mean, the working principle behind all these classifications, and they are telling the feedback from them are really very nice, very informative session. Thank you so much, sir. So really, it was really a very good session. Thank you so much. And if you have still any question, participant, you can write to me, and I can ask the sir to answer, and I'll get back to you if there is any other questions you have. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Sunil. Thank you everybody for listening patiently, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate this. You please reach me out on my email ID, and the PPT will be there, shared by Dr. Sunil to you guys. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Right. So, okay. So we have done with the 2 session. Right. Now we are going to take the break as we have scheduled. No, there is no feedback link, as I have mentioned it yesterday also. Okay, you'll get the feedback link only at the last day in your Atal login, right? So I'm not going to give you any feedback link. I'm again repeating that one. Okay, for the attendance, you just have to be in the session. Your attendance are being recorded. Okay, so that is the thing. And we will take break for the lunch, and we'll start our third and the final session of day 2 at 2:30, right? So all of you just have your lunch, and please join the session 5 minutes before, so that we'll sharply start at 2:30. Okay. Thank you so much. No, there is no hands-on today. So as we planned yesterday was we interchanged the session because Dr. Ramesh was not well yesterday. So I took the session of hands-on. So today he is going to deliver the session on regression. Okay, regression analysis. And then tomorrow we'll have the hands-on. Tomorrow and day after tomorrow again in the afternoon, we'll have the hands-on session. Fine. Okay, we'll talk more about the tomorrow session after the third session, right? Meanwhile, you have your lunch and get back and connect at 2:30, and in fact 2:25 itself. Thank you so much, all of you. We'll meet again after 2 hours. Have your lunch.